In this video, I'm going to show you how to modify the boot chime on any pre-T2 Intel-based Macintosh. Now when I say pre-T2, I mean any machine that does not have the T2 quote-unquote security chip, so that would be basically any 2017 or older system. So with that, I do have three machines here that I'll be using for this demonstration. You can see right here I've got a 2011 MacBook Pro 17-inch. Right here I've got a 2014 Mac Mini, and right here I've got a 2008 iMac. Now the reason I have these three different systems that I'll show you is because the process is going to differ slightly between the two, or between these three. So with that, before I get started, I just want to make you aware of a few caveats that you're going to run into when performing this modification. And the main caveat is that of any 2009 or later system excluding the Mac Pro. And on those systems, because the system firmware is so locked down, you cannot dump and flash the SPI-ROM from within the OS. So unfortunately, an external EEPROM programmer is required to do so. Now I'm not going to go into too much detail about that in this video, but I will show you the basic steps. So I just want to make you aware of that. So you're kind of on your own. You can use any programmer that you like that supports doing stuff like this. You can use a TL866, which is what I use, a CH341A, and even a Raspberry Pi if you choose to do so. There are methods for all of them. But for this video, I'm not really going to go into detail on that. So the next thing you want to be aware of is if you do this and install a system firmware update afterwards, the firmware update will overwrite the modifications you've made to the boot chime. So make sure you've updated to the latest OS and that you've gotten all the latest system updates, because those do contain system firmware updates, and you want to make sure you're on the latest one to more ensure that you won't have your custom boot chime overwritten. Otherwise, you'll have to repeat this entire process. Now, the next and last thing you need to be aware of before you get started is that there are two different styles of firmware that your machine could have, and they have slightly different implementations for the boot chime. So the most common that most people are going to have is the classic boot chime firmware style, which, like I said, the firmware is different, corresponds to the boot chime, and that of course sounds like this. So you can hear that's the standard boot chime that's always been on the Macintosh ever since the later PowerPC systems. So that's that. Now the other style firmware, the Big Sur and later firmware, has a different boot chime, and as such a different boot chime implementation in the BootROM, and that boot chime sounds like this. So as you can hear, the boot chime itself is a slightly lower pitch. So that's how you can differentiate that pretty easily. And of course our last machine, the iMac, has the old school boot chime as well. So you can hear it sounds like that. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started by dumping the System Rom. Like I said, I'll show you both methods, both with the EEPROM programmer and on the 2008 system with a tool I've written to do it. And either way, you just need to get a copy of the EEPROM. So I'll go ahead and get it ready and show you that process. Alright, so I've now gotten the MacBook Pro ready to dump the EEPROM. Now like I said, I'm not going to go into too much detail with this on this right now, but basically I've just connected a SOIC8 clip to my SPI-ROM on this system, connected it to an EEPROM programmer, and we'll use the software here to dump it. So I'll go ahead and do that now. Now I should mention, you do not need a Windows machine for this, unless it's required to dump and flash your EEPROM like it is in the case of this EEPROM programmer. This entire process can be done under macOS, and actually has to be done under macOS. So I will be showing the main part of this process of actually modifying the EEPROM and everything in macOS. So we'll go ahead and just let this dump here, and once it's complete, we'll be ready to proceed with the next steps. Alright, so as you can see, that is done. I'll go ahead and save it. One dump.bin. Alright, so the EEPROM is saved, and that's how to do it with an EEPROM programmer. So now I'll show you how to do it on using software, using a tool I've made. Alright, so if you have a system that does support flashing and reading the EEPROM through software, so that would be a 2008 or older system, or a 2012 or older Mac Pro. So Mac Pro 4,1, 5,1, and of course all the older ones do support reading and writing the EEPROM from software. So the first thing we need to do, if your system is running El Capitan or later, you need to disable SIP, or System Integrity Protection. So the way you do that is you just boot the machine into recovery mode and open terminal. So I'll go ahead and show you that real quick. Alright, so once you're booted into recovery mode, or a macOS 10.11 El Capitan or later installer works as well, go to Utilities and select Terminal. So once Terminal is open here, all you have to do is run one command, and that is csr util disable. And that will disable SIP, as you can see. So now we'll just go ahead and reboot back into El Capitan. Alright, so once you've booted up your machine back into your OS, now you'll need to download and run an application that I've made called Rom Tool. And this is basically just a wrapper for Flash ROM and direct hw.kext, which will dump and flash your system's EEPROM. Now, before you use this tool, it's very important that you check and make sure that your chipset in your specific machine is actually compatible with it. The NVIDIA MCP79 and MCP89 chipsets seem to be compatible with it, but they are not. It'll take, for one, extremely long to write, and when it does, it will brick the machine because it doesn't write the EEPROM correctly. So do not use this on NVIDIA MCP79 or MCP89 based systems. Now I'm going to show you how to check that real quick here. If you go to About This Mac, select System Report, and you go to SATA right here. If you have an NVIDIA chipset, MCP79 or 89, it will say it right here. It'll say NVIDIA MCP79 or NVIDIA MCP89. If it says that, do not use this tool and flash your EEPROM externally via an EEPROM programmer instead. But like I said, if it's got an Intel chipset like this, like the Mac Pros, like everything else early 2008 and earlier, you should be all set to go. So with that, we'll go ahead and get out of this and proceed with the process. Now you may be prompted to enter a password when you unzip it. If so, the password is just ROM, all lowercase. And I only had to put that because for some reason direct hw.kext is picked up as a virus by some antivirus programs, which is kind of hilarious. But anyway, once you've gotten it extracted, all you'll need to do is open the application and select Dump System ROM. It'll ask you where you want to save it. I'll save it as desktop, as iMac 81, and enter your password, and it will go ahead and dump the ROM. Alright, and as you can see, the ROM has been dumped, so now we can use this for the rest of the process. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get all three ROM dumps from all three of these machines. I've already dumped the one from the 2011 MacBook Pro, as you saw before. I just dumped this one now. You can see it is right there on the desktop. And I've got the 2014 Mac Mini ROM to dump as well. So I'll get all those dumped and then switch to the screen recording where I'll show you how to make the necessary modifications. Alright, so as you can see here, I've got the dumps of each device saved. So I've got the iMac dump, which we made on the machine itself. I've got the MacBook Pro 2011 dump right here, and the 2014 Mac Mini dump right here. Now, the process of modifying these two is going to be exactly the same, and it will be exactly the same on any machine that has the old boot chime, so the pre-Big Sur firmware, as I explained earlier. So in order to prepare the desired audio file for use in one of these system ROMs, we're going to be using Audacity as well as another tool that's part of Mac OS. Now, I haven't really done too much research into like the constraints of the audio itself, so I don't know like how long of an audio file or how much or how big of an audio file you can actually inject into the ROM. I suppose you could try it, especially if you have an external EEPROM programmer. That way if you brick anything, it won't be a big deal. I would recommend, if you don't have an EEPROM programmer, to stick within the limits of the boot chime itself, so around 3 to 4 seconds and no longer than that. Shouldn't be an issue. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get my desired audio file prepared here. So what I'm going to do is look through a copy of Mac Tracker here, as you can see, and they have a bunch of startup chimes for different machines in here. So we can, for example, take a look at the 20th anniversary Macintosh. So I've got quite a few different sounds in here to choose from. So for this demonstration, I'm going to be using the 20th anniversary Macintosh chime. So the first thing we need to do here is open the chime in Audacity. So I've got Audacity open here. We'll go ahead and open. And as you can see, we've got the chime open here. So we've got to do a few things to prepare this. So the first thing you want to do is just trim the audio down to where you think you need the sound to start. So you can see right here, there's kind of a weird, like, I don't know how to describe it, like just a tut in the audio. So we're just going to go ahead and just get rid of all this, just so the sound starts basically immediately. Just like so. So go ahead and zoom back out here. Now, you also want to make sure the level is correct, otherwise the chime might be quiet. And this is a little bit nitpicky, but we'll go ahead, and what I'll do here is open the copy of the original chime, which I already dumped from the EEPROM. So let's go ahead and just open it up here. So this is the original startup chime, as you can see here. And you want to take note of the peak here, right here. So you can see it's right above or right below 0 decibels. So we want to kind of match that for our other file here, just to make it sound exactly as we want. So I'm going to play it again. You can see this peaked out at around -3 decibels here. So we do need to change that. But before we change that, we need to change the format of this audio file. So it's got to be mono. As you can see, our original is mono, and it's got to have a bit rate of 44,100, as you can see right there. So we don't really have to worry about that right here. If you can change it without changing the speed of the audio, you can go ahead and do that. Sometimes it might change the speed. So before we do anything else though, we're going to want to make this into a mono track. So first go here, set split stereo to mono. So now we've got 2 tracks here. And as you can see, this is actually a stereo boot chime. You can see the waveform is different. Unfortunately, we can't really make use of that with these Intel BootROMs. So we're just going to go ahead and get rid of this one, because I found that the second one here sounds a little bit better. So let's go ahead and play it one more time. And note where the peak is, -3 decibels. So now you're just going to want to change the gain a little bit to get the peak to right match where the original chime was, just so it sounds exactly right. So that was pretty good. It's right below 0. We'll call that good right there. So I'm good with that. So now we can try to change the bit rate. You can go to set rate right here and select it. Now as you can see, it looks like it changed the length of it. Okay, so as you can see, that did change the pitch of it there, so that we do not want. Let's go ahead and just undo that change to revert that. And now you can see it sounds normal. So that's about good for now. So now with that done, we can go ahead and save the file. Do file, or export the file rather. Select export audio from the file menu. Make sure AIFF 16-bit PCM. Oh, and actually one more thing I wanted to make sure you verify here. You want to make sure it's set to 16-bit PCM here as well. So if you set sample format, make sure it is set to 16-bit PCM. So that's already set in this case, so I don't have to worry about it, but some audio files might be different. So now with that verified, you can go ahead and export audio, export it as AIFF signed 16-bit PCM, and we're going to save this to our file here. So I'm just going to drag that in, name it cam.aif, and you can just go ahead and select OK on that, it doesn't matter. So now we have the file in AIFF format. So now what we need to do is head on over to terminal and convert it into a CAF format. So to do that, I've actually already got a command here. It's basically pretty simple. You just do this afconvert command, and then it will be the input file first and then the output file. So we'll just drag on our input file that we just created using Audacity, and then we'll change the name of it to .caf, so you can see we've got the input file path here and the output file path here. So it'll just create a file called tam.caff in the same directory here. So just run that, and as you can see, our caff file is now there. So this file is now ready to go for a Big Sur or later style BootROM. So with that, I'm not going to convert it to anything else. We'll just go and put this in the BootROM. Now, we will have to do one extra step to inject it into an older BootROM, like the ones with the original style startup Chime. I'll go ahead and show you that after we just inject the mini version into there. So to do that, we're going to go ahead and open UEFI tool here, and we're going to open our Mac Mini 7,1 dump. So we'll go into it here, and we'll open our Mac Mini 7,1 dump. So now that with that open, we're going to want to locate the section of the file where the audio is. So I've got a couple of GUIDs here that I've found. So the new GUID, so for the new BootROM like this 2014 Mac Mini, it will be under this GUID. However, if it's the old BootROM with the classic style startup Chime, it will be under this GUID. So in this example, since we're using a newer style BootROM, we'll go ahead and copy this, do File Search, select GUID, and just paste that right in there. Go ahead and select OK. You'll see it finds one value or one entry of that GUID, which is of course what you'd expect. Go ahead and expand it here, expand it here. I don't know why it's not doing that. There we go. And now you'll see a raw section. And this size here should be about the same. And we can verify that by extracting it. So the first thing you're going to want to do is just select Extract Body. And this is optional. This is just a test to make sure that this is the audio. And we'll just save this as dumped.caff. It might overwrite that extension, but if it does, I'll rename it. Select OK. And we'll just say use .raw, I guess. It doesn't matter. And now we'll go over to the file. You can see dumped.raw is right there. We'll rename it .caff. And in theory, if this is correct, it should be the new style lower pitch boot chime. And as you can see, it was. So that's correct. We found the audio file we need to replace. So now we'll just go select Replace Body. It's just a right-click menu. And then select the, and apparently we have to rename it in macOS. So let's just do that real quick. So we'll find our caff that we want to insert. And I'll rename it caff.raw just to make UEFI tool happy. Usually you don't need to do this, but we'll just do that. Use raw. Now we can go ahead and replace body. Select our tam.caff.raw right here. Select open. And as you can see, it's now going to replace that section. So now that's done. We'll go ahead and save image file. And we'll save it as mini 7,1. Modded sound.bin. Wait for that to save here. Select yes. Make sure it reopens it correctly, and it opens it with no errors except the ones that were already there before. So now you can see we have our newly modified ROM right there. So we are ready to flash this back on the machine. Now before I go and flash this back on the system, I'm going to show you the same process of modifying the ROM, but for the older BootROM versions. And it's very similar. In fact, it's exactly the same, except there's just one extra step. So if you're flashing this or modifying the BootROM or the boot chime on an older BootROM, so like a iMac 8.1 or MacBook Pro 8.3 that did not have Big Sur, as I mentioned before, we need to open terminal one more time and run a command using a tool that I've written to convert the caff file into a weird, like stripped down caff file format needed for the older style boot ROMs. So we'll go ahead and just execute that here, caff, and that's this executable right here. And then it just asks for an input file. So we've got this one right here, the caff. It has to be a caff input file. And we need to specify an output file. So we'll specify that and just rename it to old BR for old boot ROM and just run the tool. So as you can see, the conversion was successful and it has now saved the file to this caff file right here. Now if we try to open this file and play it, you'll see it cannot play it. So you can see Finder can't play it. If you open it on Audacity, it won't be able to play it because, like I said, the caff file is in a weird format that it has to be in for the older style boot ROMs. So with that all done, we'll go ahead and open our older style boot ROM. In this example, we'll be modifying the iMac's boot ROM. And as you can see, it opened it right here. You can see it's in the title bar. And now we need to search for the old GUID, so the GUID of the audio in the old boot ROM. So go ahead and select it, select File, Search, GUID again, just get rid of that, and we'll paste that in, press OK, and you can see it found it right here. So we can expand this, expand this, expand this, and we've got our raw section once again here. Now, like I said, this is in a weird format. If you extract it, you will not be able to play it, so I won't be doing that in this. You could look at it in a hex editor and verify it's correct, but I've done this enough to know it is. We'll go ahead and just do the same thing we did before, replace body, select, of course we have to rename it again for UEFI tool, will be raw. So that's just so we can open it in UEFI tool. Go ahead and replace body once again, select tam oldbr.caff.raw, so it's open, and as you can see, it's going to do the exact same thing. We will now save this image file to dynamic 81 modded sound.bin. And select yes, verify it opens correctly, and it does. So now our modifications are complete. So with that, I'll go ahead and transition back over to the iMac, where we will flash the ROM back onto the board, and we'll do the same thing on the Mac Mini 7.1. Alright, so now that you've successfully modified the boot chime in the ROM dump, in order to flash a machine in which you can flash from system firmware or from the OS, we need to boot the machine into programming mode. Now in order to do that, you simply shut the machine down. As you can see, I've already shut this one down, and you simply hold the power button until the machine either beeps, flashes the LED, or just turns on after a delay. So we'll go ahead and do that right now. Okay, so as you can see on this one, it doesn't beep or have any LED or anything, but it just turned on after a delay. So that's exactly what you want to see. So I'll go ahead and let this boot up, and once we get in the OS, I'll show you exactly how to flash the ROM. Alright, and now that the OS is booted, as you can see, I've copied the file that we exported from UEFI tool, and we of course named it moddedsound.bin. So now we need to go ahead and open up Rom Tool once again. So now once Rom Tool is open, all you need to do is select Flash System Rom. It will warn you about the programming mode that I mentioned just before now, and if you've already done that as I explained, just go ahead and select Continue. And now we can select the modified copy of the boot ROM, select Open, enter your password, and the ROM will be flashed. Alright, and the ROM was successfully flashed, so in theory that's all you need to do. Let's go ahead and reboot the machine and see if we have our new startup chime. And as you can see, we do. So there it is. You can see it played the 20th anniversary startup chime there, and the modification was indeed successful. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and just flash the ROM on the Mac Mini as well as the MacBook Pro using the EEPROM programmer, and we will be ready to test those as well. Alright, so as you can see, I've gotten the EEPROM programmer hooked back up to the board once again, so let's go ahead and program it. First, we'll go ahead and load our modified dump here. And we'll go ahead and select Program. Alright, so as you can see, the programming was successful. So now we'll go ahead and put the bottom case back on the machine and give it a test as well. Now I've already flashed the Mac Mini, so we'll go ahead and test that one as well while we're testing this one. So I'll go ahead and get that set up. Alright, so as you can see here, I've gotten the MacBook bottom case back on, so let's go ahead and power it on and see if it works. And it does. We have the 20th anniversary Macintosh chime on this as well. We'll try it on the Mac Mini. Successful on there, and of course the iMac again. And everything has the 20th anniversary Macintosh chime, so that is indeed how to modify the startup chime on any 2017 or older Intel-based Macintosh. So, hope you enjoyed this video.